Hi, and welcome back to Terry Talks Movies. This time around, I've got a couple of kind of cool movies for you to watch. One is very recent, and the other one isn't. They're both, in their own way, horror movies, and they've both got some interesting things to say about various aspects of the society in which we live. As you can tell, I'm still using the 360 camera, and I can do different angles still, so got a couple of things to show you before we get started. Won't be very long before we start talking about the movies. First off, we've got this. And then we've got this that was made for me by a middle-aged geek girl. Which, in case you don't know, is a reference to One Punch Man. But anyway, back to me. So, horror movies are an interesting thing, and horror movies at their best reflect some aspect of current society or the society in which they were made. And I like that. The recent Invisible Man movie that A24 did was very much about domestic violence, and it really nailed that incredibly well. So, horror movies can be kind of generic. I mean, you can have a vampire movie, you can have a zombie movie. But to give it a little more texture and a little more nuance, you've got to make it about something besides shambling dead people of various kinds. And there's a kind of new genre emerging, not just in horror, but in a whole bunch of different kinds of movies, which I can only call wealthsploitation. It's about rich people being assholes and getting their comeuppance. We've got movies like Glass Onion, which is very much in that kind of wealthsploitation genre. We've got a movie like The Hunt, which came out a couple of years ago, and is about rich people hunting down poor people, and the poor people ultimately prevailing. And then we've got the movie I'm going to talk about today, a 2022 film starring Ralph Fiennes, Nicholas Hoult, and Anya Taylor-Joy, called The Menu. And The Menu is so much fun in so many different ways. It's a horror movie, it's a critique of a certain aspect of society, and it's also incredibly funny and incredibly scary and incredibly surprising, and it lands its ultimate climax in a really interesting and deeply, deeply satisfying way. You get the setup for the trailer. A whole bunch of wealthy people go to a very, very, very upmarket restaurant, an event restaurant in a sense, called Hawthorne, which is on an island. You have to travel to the island, you put away your mobile phones, you can't photograph the food. It's an experience run by a chef called Julian Slowik, played by Ralph Fiennes. And this is Ralph Fiennes bringing his A game to what might be considered by some a B picture. The budget wasn't extensive. It was $30 million, which isn't a great budget in these times of blockbuster entertainments, but it really lands well. Now, the people who come to visit Chef Slowik and his restaurant Hawthorne, which, by the way, looks beautiful. The sets in this are first rate, and the food that they present is first rate as well. You've got a guy called Tyler, played by Nicholas Hoult, who brings a date, Margot, played by Anya Taylor-Joy, with him. She's definitely out of her comfort zone in this one. She knows she doesn't fit in with these people, but still has an integrity in her sense of herself that makes it kind of interesting. And she ends up being our viewpoint character, and also critiquing and criticising the things she finds pretentious and kind of not on about all the events that happen in the first half of the film. You've got Hong Chau playing Elsa, who is the kind of maitre d' for Chef Slowik, and the rich people are played by people like Janet McTeer, very fine English actress, Paul Adelson. John Leguizamo plays a movie star who's there. So you get a bunch of people. There are a whole bunch of kind of crypto bros there. There's one of the people is a food critic who really boosted Chef Slowik's restaurant when it first opened. We get some kind of generic, very wealthy people who've been there 11 times. And Tyler, the Nicholas Hoult character, is a Chef Slowik fanboy. He's a stand for Chef Slowik. He studies everything that Chef Slowik does. He's seen the TV shows he's been on. He's the worst kind of sycophantic person you can possibly imagine with this kind of stuff is what we call here in Australia, thanks to a very fine journalist called Amy Ramikis, who coined the term crumb maiden. They're the people that hang around very wealthy people, picking up the crumbs and making a living by being yes people and crumb maidens for the very wealthy. And Tyler is definitely a crumb maiden. There's a very formal style to the way Chef Slow does the food. He makes announcements about it. He tells people what it is, and the food comes out. And he's this ringmaster running the circus in a sense. And as the confusion segues into horror, we start really enjoying ourselves. The movie is mad fun. And there are so many things I like about it. First off, the acting. You've got Ralph Fiennes. Now, Ralph Fiennes' chef is a beautifully nuanced role. He is somebody who has been deeply damaged by his life and his experiences, and the kind of people who go to a restaurant at that level. And we see the anger and the vulnerability both of the character wonderfully. And he's played off against Margot, who is very much her own person, has her own standards, and has had a tough life and lives to those standards. And they come into conflict as things go to a head. They come to an understanding as well. All of the people who are in the restaurant, apart from Margot and possibly Chef, are total bastards and arseholes in various ways, and their true natures are revealed as the movie progresses, as the courses continue, and as things get very, very pointy. I like that. I like that a lot. And I like the way that we get that criticism and critique of people who are not held to the same standards as other people. And that really nails it home. And to do that, not with anger and with rage, but with humour and with tongue firmly in cheek, is quite an achievement. And I really appreciate the way that was done in this film. Before you get too worried, there's no cannibalism, so don't worry about that. There's none of the literal eating the rich. The movie doesn't need to make its point. And the ultimate denouement of the evening's courses is wonderful. And the way that Margot confronts and acknowledges the chef at the end of the movie is perfect. It really settles things wonderfully. It underlines all the themes of everything that's happened previously, and it gives us not only a really bang ending, but it gives us a lovely little grace note at the end, which is beautifully filmed as well. The cinematography in this is marvelous. The production design is fantastic. Let's see, the cinematographer on this was Peter Deeming, and the director Mark Mylott had worked a lot on TV series like Succession. So he very much knew how to lit and film the realms of the wealthy, and does a really nice job of it. There's a couple of really good YouTube videos where Anya Taylor-Joy, Nicholas Hoult, and Mark Mylott goes through a scene in the film and show how they filmed the scene and show how they really wanted it to land. And it gives you the clear impression that these are very intelligent people, intelligent actors, intelligent filmmakers. They knew exactly what they wanted to do. They did it perfectly on a $30 million budget. And how much is the movie made now? $78 million. So they've got their bait back. And it gives us one of those movies that speaks to the times in which it's made. This is one of those movies 20 years from now, they're going to study it and realise, yeah, those post-COVID times of the oligarchical nature of reality and the deconstruction of the privileged is going to be something that makes this film one of those hidden gems of the future, and that it will be reevaluated years and years from now, and it will show something of the society in which the film was made. And I think that's important. I think that any movie that's made in this kind of horror genre, or also with very much a kind of serious intent, which this movie partly has to speak to the times in which it's made, has to speak to the concerns and the fears and the aspirations of the time in which it's made. And the menu does that, while still being funny, entertaining, horrifying, creepy, and just wonderful in so many ways. You don't need a $250 million budget and lots of blue people to make a great movie. In the wider breadth of things, even though it's never going to make anywhere near the money that a movie like Avatar 2 has, this movie has more meat on the bone than Avatar does. Avatar is pretty, and it shows us really lovely things on the screen, but it doesn't have anything below the surface that we haven't seen 50 times before. Whereas this movie, he said, hitting the microphone, whereas this movie really gives us an awareness of social injustice, while again still amusing us and still entertaining us and still giving us some really fun moments and some really beautiful food. So I enjoyed this one a lot. I liked the twists and turns of the characters as well, and the revelations of the nature of each of the characters. The supporting cast is really good. Leguizamo is really good. Janet McTeer as one of the rich people is really good. They've got Judith Light, who turned up in a whole bunch of sitcoms back in the day, doing a nice role as well. And Hong Chow, playing the maitre d' at the restaurant, has a very kind of formal and yet very, very creepy character to play here. Any movie that punches upwards is always going to get a little bit of an extra boost from me. It's one of those movies that has that wonderful combination of good young actors and good veteran actors playing with and against each other. It's that kind of osmosis of skills being exchanged between the two. The vitality of the young and the experience and the craft of the older actors just blending together to entertain us. It's a wonderful film. And if you haven't seen it, you should. Let's move on to the second film. 1999, David Cronenberg. Written, produced and directed by him. eXistenZ, starring Jude Law and Jennifer Jason Leigh. Ian Holmes in there as well. You have Christopher Eccleston in a small role. Willem Dafoe playing a guy who does a bit of biohacking on the side. And you got some good Canadian supporting actors, including Sarah Polley and Don McKellar. This is beautiful Cronenberg body horror. It messes with your mind. It gives you icky things to look at, and it entertains you, giving Cronenberg's unique twist on virtual reality. This one's coming up to being 25 years old, and I want some really good 25th anniversary editions of this to come out, and I want to see it in Australia as well. Imprint or Umbrella will be really the perfect people to do a quality 25th anniversary edition of eXistenZ. It tends to be forgotten in the oeuvre of David Cronenberg. Soon after he made this one, he moved on to things like History of Violence and Eastern Promises and Spider and movies like that, which are very much not genre films. But of course, he's come back in 2022 with a new version of Crimes of the Future, which I haven't seen yet, but I want it. But this is the last 20th century science fiction movie that Cronenberg did, and there's a lot of stuff to really enjoy on this and to be really grossed out about, and to see the skill with which David Cronenberg gives us body horror in a disturbing and kind of erotic way. The setup is that it's in the near future, and there are biotechnological virtual reality games called game pods, which are living creatures. They're fleshy, they've got nipples on them, they are very, very organic and asymmetrical, and they link to human beings so that human beings can play the games through umbicords, which are like umbilical cords that link between the game pod, and bioports, which are implanted into the base of the player's spines. And the bioports are kind of oddly sensual as well.
Wouldn't want to hurt you.
The connectors that go into them are vaguely phallic, and there's a kind of frisson that people get when they're jacked into it as well. So Cronenberg's definitely playing with the sensuality of the flesh. Jennifer Jason Leigh plays a character called Allegra Geller, who's the world's best game designer, and she's beta testing a new game she has called eXistenZ. With a small group of people in a disused church, they're getting the chance to jack into the game and to play it, and to give their feedback to her so she can tweak the game for public release. Now, this is a world where there are anti-game terrorists who want reality to be reality and don't want this incredibly immersive virtual reality to subsume the role of real reality. And one of the things that inspired Cronenberg to make this movie is he met and had some conversations with Salman Rushdie at the time when Rushdie had a fatwa against him because of satanic verses. We, of course, know what happened to Salman Rushdie late last year from a nutcase who attacked him with a knife. But this is 20th century Rushdie when he was in hiding, and various extremist Muslim clerics put a fatwa against him which threatened his life. And Cronenberg kind of played that against his interest in computer games of virtual reality and the flesh meeting technology, and came up with eXistenZ. One of the PR guys who's helping Allegra Geller is a guy called Ted Puggle, played by Jude Law, who doesn't have a game port. And there's a terrorist attack on the group, and Allegra Geller's game pod is damaged. And to kind of troubleshoot it and diagnose it, she needs somebody trustworthy that she trusts and who trusts her to jack into the game pod with her so she can do that error checking and that repair work. Pykle doesn't have a game port, so while they're on the run, they've got to find somebody to put a game port in Pykle and find safe places in which to do the diagnosis and see what's happening, make sure the game's okay, and to make sure her game pod survives. They meet a guy called Gas, played by Willem Dafoe, who installs a game port into Ted Pykle, and they drop into the game, and we see the reality that Allegra Geller has created for the game. And the game is open world in a way. The people, the subconscious, the players, create a lot of the inputs and create a lot of the plot twists and a lot of the mise-en-scène of the world in the game, so that it can be played through to an agreed ending, but in a way that's very different every time it's played, and very different depending on who's playing it. So it's a very protean kind of game. Technology of the main world is bioorganic, and the technology of the world in eXistenZ is even more so in the game reality. Allegra and Ted wandering around that world where people harvest ugly looking mutant frogs for their body parts, which are then incorporated into the game pods that they create. Yeah, it's a really weird world where you don't know quite what's real, what's not real, whether the characters are real or whether the characters are not real. And we don't know what the ultimate aim of the game is, because it's changed and twisted by infected game ports that people have, the disease that the game pod's experiencing, and the inputs from the subconscious minds of the players. Again, this was another one that was low budget, 31 million Canadian dollars. Didn't make its budget back. Box office was 2.9 million. Because I think in this case, Cronenberg was too hip for the room. He was 10 years ahead of what people could really accept and absorb about this kind of game world. Yes, you'd had movies 10 years before like Total Recall, which played with the idea of virtual reality. You had Johnny Mnemonic and you had hackers and all sorts of other things. But the level at which Cronenberg is playing in this one is way above them and way off into the distance. And he really gives us a believably icky world, and a number of incredibly icky worlds in the different layers of the game. And I like that a lot. And I like the way that the plot resolves itself. You think that Cronenberg's painted himself into a corner, and then as things resolve, he takes it to a different level and then leaves us hanging with a very, very salient question about what the hell is going on. And I like this a lot. Jennifer Jason Leigh is really good as Allegra Geller. She's got the tech cool chick thing happening, and she's playful and interesting. Jude Law's character, Ted Pykle, is a bit of a nebbish, but that's how it is. You got Ian Holm in there doing some interesting stuff. He did a lot of interesting work at the end of the 20th century. This is a year after he did Fifth Element, amongst other things, so he was willing to go to silly places in his film career. And then you've got Don McKellar playing a guy called Nourish, Sarah Polley playing a character, Christopher Eccleston, as I said, Willem Dafoe, Robert A. Silverman, who was in Scanners as one of the damaged scanners in Scanners. He turns up as a minor character as well. The world building that Cronenberg does with eXistenZ is totally fascinating. Shows that this guy, even to this day, and I'm really looking forward to seeing Crimes of the Future when I can get a copy of it, is playing at a level that very few directors and writers can match, even in these days. The fact that he turned up as a character in Star Trek Discovery, playing a very spooky spook, and I mean spook in the intelligence agent sense, is a lot of fun as well. I think that he's at a stage of his career where he's enjoying things a lot. He's proven what he needs to prove with his career. He's redefined a certain kind of science fiction movie. And it's movies like eXistenZ that prop up all the other things he's done, like Shivers and Scanners, and all the other genre films he's done. I think this one stands equal to those. Every time I watch it, I notice little bits and pieces of different stuff. Something to think about, and something to think about the nature of reality. And of course, this movie, for me at least, feels a bit like it's one of the influences on William Gibson writing his novel The Peripheral, which became a series on Amazon, which I'm going to talk about in a future video. But just to summarize on eXistenZ, I haven't got a physical copy of it. I had to download a copy, and I want a physical copy of it. I think that it's an important science fiction work of the late 20th century, standing equally with things like Gattaca, which I've really got to talk about in a video at some stage. Every time I see a Cronenberg movie again, my respect for him as a creative person, as a filmmaker, just increases. And movies like eXistenZ are so wildly different than anything you see from anybody else that it's like taking a holiday watching them. That's it for this time around. Thanks very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. I'm going to do a giveaway on the comments this time around. I've got a few things that Umbrella Entertainment have given me. So if you're leaving a comment, leave the comment, and also tell me whether you're able to play Region 2 videos, and I will send something to the top 2 commenters who give me the most meat on the bone and who want to get the stuff that I'm giving away. So thanks again for watching. If you want to support the channel another way, you can donate at patreon.com/paleocinema. Got some interesting plans for the Patreon supporters, and I've got a big giveaway this month for the Patreon supporters. Like, big giveaway. And the Patreon supporters are the people who really do help keep this channel going, and who help me with the resources to get new movies and to show you things that you might want to look at. Watch some good movies, watch some bad movies. Watch some interesting horror films, and maybe don't necessarily just sit at the top tier of cinema and watch all the really big stuff. The good stuff is further down. It's like a meat pie. You've got to get under the crust to get to the really juicy stuff. So anyway, look after yourselves, and I'll catch you next time.